And then there was a book that was recommended. Very often in a book, it would recommend other books, suggested reading. And one of them I saw a couple times was Founding Brothers by Joseph Ellis. Okay, I got that. And so I got the book and I looked, there were like 6 founding fathers in it. And one of them was Alexander Hamilton. So I'm reading it and I'm like, wait a second, this is really important. See, Franklin didn't do it, Jefferson didn't do it. I said, this is really important. And here I was a business transformation consultant. I knew how hard it was to transform a business. I could see the complication of trying to transform a country that had just gotten its independence, had tried to put together Articles of Confederation, tried to have some strength at the national level, and state governors wanted to go in their own direction. I could see the difficulty, and I was reflecting on how we live today. I'm like, well, that's a big difference from where we started and how we got there. So I learned that Hamilton had something to do with it, so I started reading Hamilton. So then I went heavy Hamilton, 34 books I read on Hamilton. And it was remarkable that every book that I read, I learned something more. But it got to a point where I was discovering some neat things about Hamilton. I would share it with my family. I'd share it with my neighbors. I'd share it with my friends. And after a while, they go, okay, he did something else great. So I saw that, wow, here this guy deserves so much credit. He did so much that there doesn't seem to be the capacity for the average person to want to hear about it or hear all of it. So these various people were questioning why I felt that Alexander Hamilton was so significant. If no one else, history books and educated, no one's hearing about him, how could it be true that I feel so strongly about this? And it got to a point where it was a bit frustrating. I was trying to find a way to do it. I couldn't figure a way to do it. I couldn't figure a way. So then I hear the news. The Hamilton Grange, Hamilton's home, has been relocated, restored, and they're going to open it September 17th. I'm like, wow, of 2011. And so I'm like, oh, good, I have so many questions, and I know that all the people who care about Hamilton and all the smart, knowledgeable people, and they're all going to be there, and I'm going to go pick their brains and create a relationship and resolve some of these things that weren't resolved in my thinking. And so I came up. At that moment, I was about to go out, I met Mariana Aller and Tom Aller. And they shared their passion about Hamilton. I shared mine. My wife came in I had asked her to get our listing of all the different Hamilton sites, because after a while I was checking off, as I was reading the books, I was listing all the places where he was born, grew up, lived, worshipped, education, lawyer, war locations. So we were checking them, and they said, oh, you're really organized. Of course, being an IBM, we do that kind of stuff. And so that was the beginning of the connection. And all of a sudden, an idea came to me. At IBM, when we were doing consulting, they had a special program at the Palisades in New Jersey about how to deal with difficult clients. And so I said, well, this is a difficult engagement. Let me see if I can go through this methodology, this approach. 57 minutes later, 4:57 in the morning of October 8th, 2011, boom, everything came into focus. All these things I had, I got in the first statement. Alexander Hamilton was George Washington's indispensable partner in war and peace for over 22 years. Okay, so that was a statement that would be impressive to people. And then I had all the evidence behind every word. What he did during the war, what he did during the peace, how he was indispensable to Washington. And then I said, well, look at all the things that Hamilton did for the foundations that we live with today. So then I came up with the statement that Alexander Hamilton created the vision and foundations upon which the United States of America achieved greatness. And I had the proof behind that. So for the next 5 days through October 12th, I wrote, composed, and consolidated. I worked 20 to 23 hours her day, full of energy, and so many things came from it. In fact, the first presentation was about Washington. What did he do in those 25 years? Then I compared 7 founding fathers, and on one page, one set of bar charts of these 7 founding fathers. So it was Henry Knox, Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, John Jay, and Ben Franklin. So I said at each point in time, to what degree did each of these 7 founding fathers help Washington win the war and win the peace? And if they significantly contributed to Washington's success, they got a dark color on their part of the bar chart. If they somewhat contributed, they got more pastel, less color. If they didn't contribute much at all to Washington's success, white. One picture, wow, Hamilton, color galore. And then the rest of the presentation is what's the proof behind the color. And I asked for years and years, if I'm missing something about one of the founding fathers, let me know, I'll add it. And it has not changed in almost 7 years since the breakthrough. And the second one, what are the foundations we live with today? To what degree did those 7, other than Knox, contribute to the foundations that we live with today? Again, Hamilton, color, 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 and some others surprisingly very little to no color. So it told that story, and then there's the proof behind it. And that's changed once. This spring, it actually improved Hamilton's standing on the legal side. Many things came from it. I did a 25-year plan. I said I got to visit all the sites. We've got to work on getting 1757 back as the respected date of Hamilton's birth. We had to form a society. We had to make sure that information got accurate in textbooks that fed articles in newspapers, etc., and to talk about this. Also an idea for a movie, idea for books. So that was put in place, and the Alexander Hamilton Awareness Society was founded on October 11th. So that was the 4th day in when I knew we had to have an organization. October 11th, 2011, that the Alexander Hamilton Awareness Society was born. A few days after coming up with ideas with my wife, it's such a long name, about Alexander Hamilton, and I think it was actually my wife Cindy who said, well, I didn't want admiration, I didn't want appreciation society, and so I was studying about how to name things, and it says you should be clear about who it is you're talking about. Hamilton could have been a lot of people, Alexander Hamilton, and I felt that if people were aware of what he did, then they would appreciate him and admire him, and everything would flow from there. So that's where and so then the AHA Society came from there, short, memorable, and has served it well. But I knew that this was a unique way to make the statement, and then I took that statement about Hamilton being Washington's indispensable partner in war and peace, and I sketched out a PowerPoint presentation. She and I decided to come up to New York City for Hamilton's birthday on January 11th. And in preparation for that, I had met Janie Gwill and Bill Crystal, who were early dedicated to the scholarship about Hamilton, just really precious people. It's helpful. So I went to him and I said, I'm going up there. Are there any activities going on up at Trinity, where he's buried here in Lower Manhattan? And Janie said, well, there's a guy I met up there. He seems to be on top of things, and Arthur Piccolo. And so she gave me his email, and it was just a few days before, 2 days before, and I sent a note up to Arthur Piccolo, and I said, is there something going on? He said, I'll be there, and we'll have a ceremony to honor him. And I found out later that Arthur has been holding the flame for a couple of decades in doing that. So I show up. It was a gray, cool day. Of course, it's January 11th, and I saw him in a gray trench coat over in the corner, and I said, maybe that's him. I went over, and sure enough, it was. It was great that we did connect. And then we were, sizing each other up, what we knew and stuff like that. So when I met up with Arthur, he said, I'll know if you know Hamilton. What was the most important day in Alexander Hamilton's life? So I was thinking about a number of things. And then when he shared the date, I said, Arthur, come over here to my daughter who's on the bench. I said, Nicole, what is the most important day that I talk about in our presentation? And she said, September 11th, 1789, the exact same day that we see the inflector when the whole nation moved in a new direction. Arthur had that similar understanding. So we both knew that we had the truth about Hamilton, understanding that his influence, his effect, and on. And so Arthur was just incredible. In fact, he's someone who's linked us up that are coming along the way to grow a critical mass of people. And so he called up John Herzog and said, there's someone here who knows about Hamilton, has some ideas, has some breakthroughs. Arthur led it. He was very kind to let me say a few words. It was really special. It meant a lot to me. That was January 11th, 2012. So went through that, said goodbye. All of a sudden, I don't know how it happened, but Doug Hamilton was contacted saying that and Doug Hamilton, by the way, is a fifth great grandson of Alexander Hamilton. He was the one in 2004, 8 years earlier, that was the representative of the Hamilton family that held the gun in the reenactment of the duel in Weehawken. And so Doug was interested in hearing, based on the feedback from the National Park Service. Doug flew down to Tampa, Florida, together. And at the time, Doug mentioned two important things. Number one is Hamilton wasn't revered, honored, or respected their whole lives. So the Hamilton family, it wasn't a lot of information and pride or knowledge about Hamilton, what he had done. He mentioned that when he was in the duel reenactment, the press was coming up to him asking him a lot of questions about Hamilton, and he realized, boy, I better bone up even further on learning about Hamilton. And of course, Doug Hamilton's a very sharp guy. Coincidentally, he also worked for IBM on the Columbus, Ohio branch for the banking industry. Quite fascinating in that respect. So we went down, I presented the first presentation. It was February 11th, so that's like almost exactly a month from when I shared at the National Park Service here in New York. Through our connection through Arthur Piccolo with John Herzog. John Herzog was interested in the finding, wanted to hear more, and so it was set up that I would give a combined 1 hour talk of the two presentations at the Museum of American Finance in July of 2012. And just before that, Nicole and I reconnected with Marianne Aller and Thomas Aller. We formally put a board together as a nonprofit. From there, John Herzog, maybe a year or so later, became an honorary chair, and his guidance was instrumental. Arthur Piccolo helped us establish relationships and connections with various people throughout the lower Manhattan area, like Trinity Church. That was really important. Federal Hall, National Park Service, the Alexander Hamilton U.S. Custom House, National Archives, the Museum of American Finance. So this is where a lot was happening, and so it was maturing. We started then as a board developing relationships, because we said we can't do all the educating about Hamilton. And we visited the site. Mariana, Tom did, Nicole and I did, and my wife Cindy did. We visited the sites, and they didn't know what Hamilton did at those sites. Not at all. Zero. So we said, well, they're the educators every day. So part of the strategy in that 25-year plan was educate the educators, teach the teachers, so that as they meet every day, and when we met with them, they got excited to learn a new dimension. Could at least answer. So this is part of the maturing process along the way. Setting those relationships. Then we started setting up, starting that July of 2012, Celebrate Hamilton.